Have you ever experienced the sensation of being stuck in your body while being fully aware of your surroundings? If you've never gotten a taste of sleep paralysis before, consider yourself lucky. Despite there being facts to help us approach understanding sleep paralysis in a scientific way, as an individual who has experienced it myself, I have to admit that it's a very scary experience. Thankfully, I no longer get sleep paralysis anymore, and fingers crossed that I don't jinx it, but I genuinely empathize with those who continue to grapple with this phenomenon. It can be very terrifying. For today, I have compiled a few scary sleep paralysis experiences, some of which are my own, and I hope you all enjoy it. I will start with sharing my personal sleep paralysis experiences. I first developed sleep paralysis when I was around 15 years old, just weeks before my family relocated from our haunted house in West Side St. Paul. If you haven't already listened to the story about my family's haunted house in West Side St. Paul, you can find the link in the description below. My sleep paralysis started out as just a few sporadic episodes here and there, and then eventually they became a near daily ordeal, and that lasted for several years. One of the scary instances was while I was sleeping on my bed while facing up. I suddenly found myself in the state of sleep paralysis. During that time, my eyes were slightly open prior to me even realizing that I was in sleep paralysis. So when the realization set in, my gaze had already fixated on the figure that was at the end of my bed. It was hanging from the ceiling. I was able to for sure tell that this was a lady in a tattered dress and had hair dripping down, but I don't have any further details on how it looks like because in that moment I was just trying to not look at it and focus on closing my eyes shut. As I was trying so hard to close my eyes, the thing started to move and convulse as if it was struggling to remove a noose around its neck. It was really scary, so when I finally got my eyes to close, the ringing in my ears became super duper loud. I think I eventually just fell asleep again. After this experience, I was so terrified that I always made the conscious decision to keep my eyes closed during sleep paralysis episodes. Otherwise, I know I will start seeing stuff. Another scary incident happened when I was living in a townhome that I rented with my brother and sister-in-law. I was a college student still at the time, so after class I would just drive back home in the afternoon. This one particular afternoon, I napped on the sofa in the living room. I had The Office playing on the TV for background noise. While napping, all of a sudden, I realized I couldn't move my body, so I was like, oh shoot, I'm in sleep paralysis. Thankfully, my eyes were closed this time, and I was able to stay calm. I wasn't necessarily scared at the moment. I just laid on the sofa, waiting for my body to sort of catch up with my brain so that I could naturally wake up on my own. However, it started to feel like it was taking forever. I don't know how long it was in real time, but to me, it felt like I laid there for a good 20 minutes. I grew super impatient, so I started to fight my sleep paralysis and try to wake up. And I remember it being really tough because I wasn't tired enough to fall back asleep, but I also wasn't strong enough to break out of it. Finally, I heard footsteps coming down from the hallway into the living room, which was where I was sleeping. That's when I decided to open my eyes a tad bit and take a peek, just to see if it was my sister-in-law or brother, so I could scream and try to get their attention so they could wake me out of it. As soon as I opened my eyes to take a peek, I saw my brother. He was in front of me. He had the controller in his hand, and he was facing the TV. His back was facing me. I tried screaming with all that I could, but he obviously couldn't hear me because he didn't turn around. And then after what seemed like 3 minutes of him watching TV, he turned off the TV and then he just walked back up the stairs and into his room. I felt super frustrated. For those who do watch Naruto, the best way to describe how I felt during that time is like how Kakashi got trapped in Itachi's Sharingan in that one episode where Itachi came to the Hidden Leaf Village. But yes, after some struggling, I did manage to break free, and I almost fell off the sofa. I started stomping up the stairs, going to confront my brother about him not noticing me earlier. As soon as I got up the stairs, I flung his door open, and then I looked in his room, but his room was empty. I checked my phone, and the time showed that he should still be at work. So that meant that I was home alone the whole time, and whoever I saw earlier was not him. I could just shrug it off and say that I hallucinated during my sleep paralysis, but the one thing I can't explain is how the TV was actually turned off when I woke up. Oh, and another weird thing about that townhome is I also experienced astral projection there once. As I was laying in my bed drifting to sleep this one night, I started feeling myself as a spirit float up and off the bed. I turned around and I could see my physical body still laying on the bed. I freaked out and I forced myself to fly back into my body. I actually did not know what astral projection was at the time. So after some research, I found out what it was and how it could have been really risky if I were to let myself wander in the state of astral projection. I read stories about how it can draw negative entities or make it difficult for those who experience astral projection to return to their physical body. I was definitely spooked. I don't hear a lot of Hmong people talk about astral projection experiences. So if you've had any experiences, please let me know in the comments section below. I'd be really interested to know. But that sums up the few scary experiences that I've had with sleep paralysis. The next two are even scarier. I died a little while reading them. So I hope you enjoy. Back in my sophomore year of college, I chose to dorm with my cousin Ting. Our residence hall was rumored to be very haunted. Many students, especially the Hmong students there, reported seeing and experiencing paranormal stuff. Despite all the rumors, though, this dorm was right smack in the middle of the whole campus, so it made an ideal living location. I lived there the previous year on the 4th floor, and I didn't see anything, so I elected to stay there again, but this time on the 2nd floor. I slept on the bottom bunk while Ting slept on the top bunk. There was one night where I stayed up to study while Ting was already asleep. When I decided to sleep, it was in the early AMs already, and the dorm had become extremely quiet at this point. I slipped into bed and closed my eyes, hoping to drift off to sleep. I felt shuffling from above and assumed Ting was moving in his sleep. Lying on my back, I decided to shift to a more comfortable side sleeping position. As I turned and settled on my side, there was a face right next to mine. My body became instantly paralyzed as I observed the face of an old, pale man. He started to scream into my face. I closed my eyes and focused on drowning his scream with other thoughts, until I eventually fell asleep. The following day, while we ate in the dining hall, I told Ting about what I experienced. Ting looked at me dead in the eyes. He looked like he was even more scared than me. He told me that in the middle of the night, he found himself in an episode of sleep paralysis too. From his position on the top bunk, he was able to get a pretty good view of the whole room. While in sleep paralysis, Ting saw a shadowy black figure emerge from his closet. The thing made its way over to the ladder of his bunk and climbed up onto his bed, then onto his chest. Ting said it looked exactly like what I had described. It stared down at Ting for some time, and then bursted out screaming into his face. I believe in science, and I usually don't fear sleep paralysis that much. This was, however, more than the coincidence that we both got sleep paralysis on the same night and saw the same guy. I brought this up to my mom 2 weeks later while we were on winter break. She was upset that Ting and I didn't tell her sooner. Before I came back to the dorms, my mom tied some strings on me, and she had me bring some back for Ting. She also gave me some red fabric stick figure cutouts and instructed me to tape them on our doors, closets, and beds. I thought she was overdoing it, but surprisingly, we never experienced anything after that. I don't know if this is a thing anymore, but back when I was in middle school, all my peers would get to go on a 4-day camping field trip at the end of the year. It was an annual thing that my school did for the 8th graders in celebration of ending middle school. The camping location was at a Minnesota state forest with the Mississippi River running through it. Everything seemed fine when we got there, and the day was eventful, but then it came nighttime. After the teachers and chaperones gathered all of us students in the picnic area to go over the next day's plan, my friends B, Hoa, and I, the 3 of us, decided that we should take one last trip to the bathroom before we head to sleep in our tent. B suggested that we use the single porta potty that was closer to our camp area, as opposed to the actual bathrooms with stalls further down. Given that the bathrooms were a considerable distance away and the path was dimly lit by just one light, we unanimously decided to go with the porta potty and just bring our water bottles along to wash our hands with. When the 3 of us gals arrived at the porta potty, I took the first turn and used it while B and Hoa stayed outside. Once I was done, B entered, but she quickly turned around, insisting that either me or Hoa go inside with her with the flashlight, because she was scared and didn't want to sit in the dark. Hoa volunteered to go with her. While waiting for them, my eyes naturally started to look around the area, and this creepy sensation crept over me. I heard a loud whistle that came from the area behind the porta potty. I assumed Hoa and B heard it too, because they stopped talking mid-sentence, and an eerie silence enveloped the surrounding. Within moments, B's water bottle, which she had set outside next to the porta potty, unexpectedly tipped over and rolled toward me. It was as if somebody purposely kicked it. Seeing this, I got scared and began banging forcefully on the porta potty door, urging them to hurry up. And the 3 of us sprinted back to the camp area screaming. We gave all our peers and teachers a big scare. They all thought we were in great danger. When we calmed down, we told the teachers what happened. I'm sure our stories sounded rather ridiculous to them. One of the teacher's assistant, Mrs. Yang, who was on the trip with us, and also Hmong, she convinced the teachers to let us not sleep in the tents that night. The three of us and Miss Yang ended up sleeping in the back of a cargo van, the vehicle that one of the teachers came in. It's one of those big white vans where you use to haul things around, so it doesn't have any rear passenger seatings. Miss Yang slept in the front passenger side with the chair cranked back. The three of us had our sleeping bags laid out next to each other in the back of the car. Our heads were towards Miss Yang and our feet were towards the trunk. While everyone seemed to have fallen asleep already, I was having a hard time doing the same thing. I laid on my side, facing Hua, but I kept falling in and out of sleep. Each time I fall out of sleep, I would twitch violently, almost hitting Hua. After the third or fourth time of waking up this way, I adjusted myself to sleep on my back. I slowly fell asleep. Then I woke up again. But this time, I was unable to move. And this time, I heard the trunk doors of the cargo van open. I could feel the wind come in from the open trunk. A cold hand brushed along the outside of my sleeping bag by my feet. I looked down in that direction, and there was a black figure crouching by my feet. I screamed as hard as I could. Out of nowhere, I was able to break out of my sleep paralysis mode. I quickly looked at the trunk doors. They were still closed, like nothing had happened. Whistles came from the front of the vehicle. I got up and looked at Miss Yang. She was still sound asleep. Next to Miss Yang, in the driver's seat, was a lady crouching, holding onto the seat's headrest, staring at me. In the darkness, I could only see her eyes blinking and the shape of her puckering mouth. I screamed and bolted out of the car as fast as I could. My mind was racing when I exited the vehicle because everywhere looked scary and everyone was asleep. I dashed to my homeroom teacher's tent and started unzipping it. As soon as I opened the tent flap, my homeroom teacher was already alerted and sitting up. I charged in and buried my head into her arms, and I clung onto her. Just as I thought I was safe, I turned my head upwards and looked at my homeroom teacher. The one I thought I was clinging onto was not my homeroom teacher, but the same lady that I had seen in the car just moments earlier. That was the last thing I remember, hallucinating and seeing my homeroom teacher as the ghost lady. Apparently, I passed out shortly after making it into my homeroom teacher's tent. Because of me and what happened that night, our whole entire camping trip was cut short. All of us returned home in the morning. After that trip, I got really sick. I kept getting sleep paralysis and seeing black figures around my room. My grandpa had to ordain or perform shaman rituals to retrieve my soul from the forest and the van that we were sleeping in. My parents even drove my grandpa to the campground to call my spirit home from there. When they came back, my mom said she saw a memorial set up in the middle of the forest. I don't remember seeing that when we were there. Did I miss it? Or was that new? I'll never know. Hey viewers and listeners, thank you for sticking through till the end of the video. Do you have sleep paralysis? If so, did any of these stories intersect with your own experiences? Hope you enjoyed this video and stay safe.